Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope you have some time to set aside to watch this interview. It is a treat. Matt Mahurin is as unstoppable as a runaway train. He's overflowing with visions, and in this interview, you get to see that brilliant brain work, the process, the way it runs, and the way it runs at just full speed. And it's no wonder he's so amped up because it turns out we've been viewing culture through his eyes for the last 40 years. If you like magazine covers, if you like music videos, if you like art illustrations, children's books, everything, he has been the filter, the lens. This is the man behind the curtain who has shaped how we see culture in many regards, quite specifically the way I see culture anyway. And he deserves a better stage than the one I give him in this video because my editing skills, friends, are weak and he's a little bit off the grid, so his audio isn't the best quality. But if you put some of those quality issues aside, your lowly host here, and focus on what he says, we talk about confidence, relevance, persistence, renewal, reinvention, humility, and everything that makes art the apex of human existence. So I'm going to step aside for now and we're going to hand it over to the interview. I hope you enjoy it. I love hearing from the people who create such incredible things, as jealous as it makes me. And I got to say, during this interview, I am like, what did you do with your life, Jeff? This guy has dominated. Brilliant guy. I love his work in Legion, the Suntup edition that I'm celebrating with this interview. But as you'll see, that's just the tip of the Matt Mahurin iceberg. And this is not an Illuminati signal. This is an iceberg.
For once, I'm not talking to myself. It's time to go beyond the book and get over your shelf.
Thank you so much for joining me. I think because of you, I'm going to stop researching my interview people because it's overwhelming how overqualified you are for my channel. You've won so many awards. You're like a chef for everything the eye ingests, like videos, your illustrations, your cover of Rolling Stone, all these things. You've been circling my life in many ways with Saint Anger, Tracy Chapman, REM. I just, it's mind blowing. And your recent exposure to my world with of course Suntup and other illustrations I've seen your work appear in other books is just the tip of the iceberg. So I appreciate you taking the time today. I know you're a busy guy.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. I mean, still, I've been doing this 40 years, and I still, it's still that kind of thing. Like anytime the phone rings or somebody wants to have me, do my thing or talk to them, or I get a student or somebody who's a pro. It's just, I still, after all this year, I still am into it. I'm just grateful.
It's wild. I went to your website and I was looking at all your work, and I'm looking at all the things. I didn't see some of the books I've recognized you from, like, for example, Haunting of Hill House, things that were out and already done. And, it's not like I'm revealing anything. A lot of your other stuff, it feels like a photo, but also an illustration. I don't know if you want to, can you talk about that? Like, how do you create those visuals?
Basically, I started as a painter. Ever since I was a kid, all I wanted to do was draw. I was a terrible student. I couldn't focus. I could stay up all night in the school dark room. My photography teacher would lock me in the dark room at night, and I'd stay up all night there. And or I sit in my room all day long at my drawing table that I got as my birthday present. I got my own drafting table, which is like so professional. Like 13 years old, and I just draw all day long. And so I just would just go and just that's all I wanted to ever do. Because I didn't have, but if I had to do like a page of like a geometry assignment or break down a sentence, you might as well just put a gun to my head because I just did not have that together. So, but I had tremendous support from my parents. They're a doctor and nurse, but they're both very creative people. My mom is a beautiful pastel artist, and my dad was an incredible photographer. So somehow it kind of merged in me, and I was able to kind of just kind of pursue that. And it was my It was the only thing I ever wanted to do. Was, other than I had a brief period where I wanted to be a Hollywood stuntman, but I lacked the technical skills. So to get up on a ladder and just go like this and go, all right, I'm gonna practice it. I was like, after a cracked rib or two, I said, all right, I gotta go back to my drawing table. But I basically just evolved through all these different mediums. You know, I was always wanted to explore new things, and I wanted to do an illustrator, and that was really the goal was to do the cover of Time magazine. I worked my way through Art Center. I went to Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, and I worked my way through art school. My parents came in and said, you know, that thing that a kid hears, we got other kids here to put through college, and you're going to go out and have to find a job. I'm like, oh shit, no. And after being indignant, whatever, spoiled kid or whatever, I said, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to work in a McDonald's or the Gap or something. I just don't have. I knew myself well enough that I just did not have that. And making like at that time $3 an hour, whatever it was, the minimum wage, it would take me a whole semester just to make the money to go to the next semester. So I decided to take a whole semester off, and I wanted. My hero was this illustrator, a political cartoonist for the LA Times named Paul Conrad, Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist. And I spent the whole semester off just re-illustrating articles from Los Angeles Times. I took articles that had not been illustrated and did illustrations for them. I did portraits of world leaders. At that time, it was like Ronald Reagan and Ayatollah Khomeini. And I would go and I put together a portfolio of like 20 illustrations that were like for magazines, and went down and got an appointment at the LA Times and walked in with these. Just was very clear I was either going to get it or not get it, and I walked out with a job that day and worked there almost every Sunday for 25 years. That's how I paid my way through art school. So I'd get my assignment on Wednesday and I'd have to deliver it on Thursday. So I get it Wednesday night and I just stay up working on this, something about what was going on in the world. And then I would have to get in my car and drive from Pasadena down into downtown LA, and I'd pull up at the butt end of the LA Times building where all the cargo doors were open, and I'd show up at 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and there'd be these LA Times trucks like rumbling, at the back of the gate, and I'd smell the diesel fuel mixing with that printing ink as I looked into and I saw these giant presses, and just this merging of the press reporting, literature, art, photography coming out of those papers, going into this truck and being sent out in the world. And I have my little illustration in an envelope, and I'd hand it to the security guard that I got to know. And then I'd drive home and either finish my assignment or crash for a couple hours and then go back to school. And then my dream job was to do the cover of Time magazine. That was the pinnacle before the internet and everything. That was where everybody went for their news. And if you got the cover of Time magazine, you knew 3 or 4 million people were going to see your piece of art. So I was like 24, and I got an assignment to do 2 pieces inside on the history of on domestic violence. And they had already hired 3 other illustrators, some legendary people: Brad Holland, Francis Jeter, and Carol Wall, some really amazing illustrators. And I was doing 2 pieces on rape. And I started doing the assignment, and I really, as I was working, I said, my dream was not to be in Time magazine. My dream was to be on the cover of Time magazine. So I got taken by the assignment so much, I was going to call. I had other ideas popping up into my mind. So I said, I'm just going to do. Maybe I should call them to see if it's okay if I just do more illustrations, even though they'd hire these other people. But I said, they may tell me I'm putting them on the spot. They may feel like they have to pay me. I'd be, right, undermining somebody else's work or whatever. So I said, it's my time. This is what my dream job was ever since I was in art school. This is once I was aware of this opportunity to do like a socially, politically relevant image that everyday people would see. And so I just did like 10 pieces, and I walked in, and instead of putting 2 pieces on the ground, I laid out these 10 pieces on the floor, and Kristen art director said, "Oh, well, wait right here." And she went back in, and they were being looked at by the editor of Time magazine, the head art director. And they said, "Wow, these are pretty cool. Well, you can head back, get some sleep or whatever, and we'll let you know." And then by the time I got back to my little hellhole apartment in Brooklyn, they called me and said I'd gotten the cover and 9 pieces inside, and they killed everybody else's work. And
wow.
So I was 24 years old. I still remember getting the check. I'd made like, $200, $300. I got paid like, I think $212 for the LA Times pieces. And I went in to get the check, and they said, I said, I don't know how much I'm going to get paid here. And so it was like the check where she says, I thought you'd say $3,000 or $4,000. She says, how about 9? Let's make it even $10,000. And that's like $24,000 in like I think around that 20,000, whatever it is, it's double, more than double. And I'm like, that's amazing.
Wow.
And I sent my parents a Xerox for the check, and that was just about the amount of money it cost to put myself through art school. It was like, that was
Wow.
my, and I sent them a Xerox of the check, and I went to the bank, and I had this fantasy of them bringing the money out and showing it to me first. I didn't want it to be some electronic beep, you know, on some computer. I said, just carry it out in like denominations that I couldn't walk out of the bank with it, you know, singles, whatever's coins, you know, bring it out to me in quarters. Just let me see it and then take it back. That was like my beginning into this world. And then I got an illustration that I got burnt out on that, which I never thought, nobody ever talked to me about being burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
I would lay in bed at in my apartment staring at the ceiling, have 4 or 5 or 10 jobs lined up, and I was just miserable. And nobody ever told me I'd ever be miserable about the thing that I love to do. And here I am now, sick of it. So, I mean, the idea of getting an illustration, I pay this amount of money, sketches to do here, finishes to do there. I was like, the act of painting had become no more exciting to me than, you know, a journalist or somebody just typing, the physical act of typing out a story or, you know, an essay or something. There was no soul in it at that point for me, motivation. And I was still very professional, and my quality of my work never suffered. But personally inside, I was having struggles. So I just decided I'm going to become a photographer. And then I started doing photography. And then I went into doing photo essays, Texas prison system, abortion clinics, mental hospitals, Haiti, Nicaragua, Belfast, and had this life as a kind of photojournalist. And then got into the music business and ended up doing Rolling Stone covers and album covers, whether it's Tracy Chapman or Sting. I started working with U2. In fact, U2, I brought my photography portfolio to the stadium they were playing. I think it was Giant Stadium at the time. And I brought my portfolio of these beautiful kind of archived prints in this beautiful slipcase. I brought it to the door to the backstage, and I gave it to this woman and said, I'm a photographer. My art students are just taking me to a show at the band a couple weeks ago in Madison Square Garden, and I just love their work. And I'm just handed to you. And then she came back out and went like this, and I followed her through the labyrinth, the bowels of Giant Stadium, and walked in this room. And there's Edge sitting there saying, you have this one photograph of this woman from the South, this African-American woman from the South. And I said, actually, that's a prisoner. And there in the ad said wing, that's a gay prisoner who will put Nair all over their face, the hair removal stuff that they used to have, put that all over their face. And he said, well, he said, I'd love to buy that photograph. And I said, and I was only allowed to photograph the first 3 songs. So I said, I'll tell you what, you can take the print out of the, it's an archival fine art print. You could take it out of the box and have it if you just let me photograph the whole show tonight. And within like 2 minutes, I had like lanyard with the all access VIP thing.
Wow.
When I like 2 Hasselblads, these big giant jalopy cameras, and all these other guys had 3 motor drives around their neck and they're firing away. But after 3 songs, they all got kicked out, and I stayed there, went home, made this whole portfolio of prints, went back the next day, and then a couple days later, I'm flying on their private plane from Hartford, Connecticut to Philadelphia, and they loved the music they were doing, the live performances. They said, we really love the music, but this is before internet and being able to blast things across the pond from here to Ireland or whatever. And they said, we don't have any designers or artists, but we'd love to put an album, but we have no art. And I'm like, I'll do it. And I never designed anything. So I went off and it ended up being their EP, Wide Awake in America. And then the back, you turn it over on the back, you see in big letters. I never knew what was going to happen again. So big letters, not big letters, but nothing around it says photography and design by Matt Mahurin. Because I was just so like this, and it was just this whirlwind thing. And then I worked with them I co-directed With or Without You video, and I worked with them for 35 years. I started when I was 26 or 27. I'm 64 now, and I've worked with them this whole time. A few years ago, I did a 10-minute short film with Bono, which is probably the coolest experience for me and project I'm most proud of in all my 200 and something music videos. That's my most it's a film of him reading the lyrics from the album. So it just evolved in these things. And then through all this, I was always doing illustrations, and I always loved book illustrations. And the first real experience I had in doing book illustrations was Time Life used to have these series of books that I put out, and one of them was called The Enchanted World. And it was all these things about night creatures and giants and ogres and all these classic fairy tales. And I got a gig working on that, and I ended up doing like 80 paintings or something. And over the years, I've just gotten incredible letters from people, and people have sent me pictures from the books. I said, I found this out by the garbage. People were throwing the set away, and I found your work. And it's that's the whole like when I did the Time Magazine job on rape and child abuse and domestic abuse, about 3 or 4 weeks after I did the work, I got this whole big envelope of letters, and in that, I spilled it out on my table, and there was all these letters from like Alaska and Nebraska and Connecticut and wherever. And I thought, oh, these are young illustrators saying, how am I going to get a break? And, how'd you get this job? And there's a little blurb on me inside the magazine. And it's actually the letters, there wasn't any letter from a single artist. They were all from people who were victims of child abuse or domestic abuse or sexual abuse. And they were writing to tell me what the work meant to them. One was a couple with a boy and his girlfriend, a young man and his girlfriend. She had a victim of that, and they were having troubles with that, so they decided to lay my drawings out on the table and then do their own drawings about the experience. Another woman who'd been raped took my image on rape, and she had that folded up and had carried it around in her purse. Anytime she wanted to express to somebody what the nightmare was like, she would show this image that I had done. So what I realized in that moment was, even though as an artist, this is very self-indulgent, very kind of selfish, self-driven, self-motivated, self-determined career. But I realized, and I was aware of all those things. I get to stand around in my underwear and paint and make a good living and just work on these subjects and develop myself as an artist and meet other cool artists and work on these fascinating subjects. But I realized my real job was not, even though it was a creative process, my real job was I was a professional, I don't even know if it's really a word, professional sharer. My job was to share. And my job was to send my work out into the world and then, just help people complete a circle about an emotion or an experience or an opinion and challenge them, whatever it involved. I said, so when I learned that at 24, that's 40 years ago, and that's been my basic rule, is just this cycle of sending my stuff out in the world. Any system to be able to prevail, survive, and to be maintained has to be a cycle. Whether it's digestion, you eat the food, you poop it out, you eat more food, you poop it out, the water goes up into the clouds, it comes down, it goes to harvesting, you grow the food, you eat, poop it out. I mean, it's all, so I've been spending, and sometimes it's very, very hard to do, but I've spent my whole career keeping this cycle turning. Sometimes it's stalled, sometimes there's been a chink in it or whatever. Sometimes it's maybe gone backwards a little bit, but for the most part, that's been my driving force, and that's given me the ability to evolve as an artist. And so after this Time Life series doing these things, I really got hooked on book illustration, and I ended up doing, my wife's a brilliant children's book illustrator. Her name's Lisa DeSimone, and she's done 35 books, incredible. And so I saw what she was doing in children's books. Even my work was very dark, so I started illustrating a couple of children's books. And so my work started going out as a book cover, and that's where I ended up getting this project for Legion. So that's kind of how this is all the kind of backstory.
Well, I think it's amazing. I think in 19 minutes, you've given us 9 lives and a Francis Ford Coppola rise and fall and reclaim of an icon. The whole arc is amazing. And you say selfish, but I say human, because I think the whole process of creating art is the most human thing we can do. Any animal can run around, survive, find a way to thrive and build a community and build a family and expand and all that. Any animal can do that, any organism. But the thing that makes us human is the ability to reach out and communicate in ways that in such a visceral way. That's why I think that story of all those people identifying with your work in such a personal way is incredible. But also inevitable when you have powerful visuals. I think for my reaction to your work, and this could just be me projecting, I don't know, but there's a real sense of isolation.
So in terms of the quality of my work, it's as much a aesthetic decision as it is a kind of conceptual decision. Like, I just love simplicity. I love the solitary act. I'm very much I've definitely got one foot in the world of the recluse, even though when I'm doing things like this, or I'm talking or teaching, which I've been doing forever, or I'm on a set for a Metallica video and there's 100 extras and I'm on a crane with fire and snow and snakes and all this kind of stuff. I love that, and I'm really in that world. But once I'm out of that world, I'm in this world. This is my universe, and so I'm living in that. And the work, whether I'm walking down the street with a camera, I'm searching for that. But for me, because I'm a very individualistic person, and I believe a lot in kind of internal dialogue with myself. So I spent a lot of time just in myself, working through a job or a personal struggle or whatever it is I'm going through. So I'm kind of seeking the isolation of the single person in the world and in my videos and in my photography. Very rarely do you see, in terms of the focus, you see a group scene unless that's really the point. But for the most part, I think it's easier to identify as an individual when you're looking at, for the viewer to see themselves in it, my work, if they're identifying with the kind of singular figure or singular character or singular issue. So, and I just aesthetically, I love simplicity. Even the way I live if you look at like even this, it's very simple behind me. It's like I try to have as much open air space around me, and I think that just shows up in the work. But then when I'm doing stuff like the stuff for the book, it ends up having a different kind of, then anything's possible. And also people say, oh, your work is so dark and moody and all this stuff, but you seem like a pretty easygoing guy. And I am on a certain level, but I think one of the reasons that I come across that way is because I've been able to be fulfilled as a creative being by purging myself of drama, darkness, and also what I feel about things has been 40-year career of being validated for what my point of view is. I mean, whatever technical skills I have with creative skills in terms of composition or drawing skills or photography skills or whatever, I'm not hired for those reasons. I'm hired, that's part of the reason, but the main reason I'm hired for, which I've come to learn, which is what my intention was, is to be hired from my point of view, really about what I have to say. So in all this world of AI and NFTs and digital imaging and all those kinds of things, I feel like content is king, and I am protected. That is the force field around me. Is that is the one thing people can appropriate my work. They can come in and push a couple buttons and do something that would rival something I spent hours on. But they're never going to be able to kind of get inside my head and my soul and all those kind of cliche things you would say. And that's the thing that's been made me be able to prevail. So not just through things like AI or NFTs or any of that kind of stuff, but also through different mediums, through getting older. And the operative word for me now is, first you have to prove you're worthy to make a living as an artist. Then you have to aspire to success. Then you have the additional challenge to maintain success, which can be just as difficult as achieving success. And then now at this stage, what I've had to do is to remain relevant. That's like the operative word for me as an artist right now. And so that's led me to the place I'm in right now, where for the last 23 years I've been working. 23 years ago I wanted to write. There's a book when I was in art school called The Art Spirit by Robert Henry, and I read it, and after 20 years of a career, I decided that I feel like I'd had enough successes and failures and worked in enough different mediums. I mean, I'd had my work as in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I've done videos for all these rock stars. I had a movie in Sundance, but I've been sober for 20 years. So I got past alcoholism and workaholism. I've been able to support myself for all these times. I've gone through all my personal struggles. When I started to write this book, I thought I could share my story. And so it's evolved into this pretty much a 2,000-page, 5-volume set called The Image Maker's Handbook, as I mentioned. And it basically starts from the time you're, a student, through life as a professional, through success. And then at the end of it, the final book, the 5th book, is called The Work, which I take 40 assignments, 40 projects, and I break it down on like a kind of granular level. That's what's it like to direct a music video, illustrate a children's book, do a photo essay in a third world country, I printed this Tom Waits book of images, what's it like to work with famous people, what happens if you also want to ask for a tremendous, you also need to have a job where you can ask for a lot of money. And so there's and it's all told through stories. It's like an encyclopedia. And in the course of writing these 4 books, I came across topics that had to do with being a human being that could survive themselves and not only survive themselves, but actually thrive in spite of themselves. And that book is called The Essential. I don't really like the term self-help book. It's more of a life skills book. And it's taken me 23 years to write this book, because it's taken me 40 years as a professional artist and 64 years as a human to get to this place. And in addition to doing that, while I was working on this as a companion piece, people have wanted to do, since I do all my videos kind of by myself now, I've always shot and edited myself, but now I do everything from building the props and negotiating and uploading them and all the specs and everything. People want to do a documentary, kind of follow me around about how I did my videos. And I decided I'm going to make a movie about my creative process, and it's called Creative Life. And basically I've been wearing a GoPro on my head for the last year when I'm working and living. And so the whole movie, it's an 1.5 to 2 hour movie. I don't know exactly yet because I'm working on it still. but the whole movie is kind of, you never see me in the movie. You see my hands, my feet, my body. You see me fall down, cut myself. You see me sculpting things, painting. You see me holding a light, lighting a rock star. How to set the camera, knocking shit over, and still coming out with this stuff that I still get hired for. So I think that's something that, from an educational point of view, the way the world of education is changing, this is something where somebody could have this 2,000 pages of, it's like, they're like textbooks. They're for serious people, not somebody who wants to, like, oh, how do you draw a cute face, or how do you market your stuff online? It's not that kind of thing. This is about, goes to the deepest part of the process, and how to, get the most out of yourself.
You're right. To capture those 40 years of experience, so 64 years of being a human being, and capturing that is so important. Of course, I wish we had another hour to talk about Legion as well, but because your work in that is chilling. There's one image that I keep going back to.
Which one is it? Which one is it?
It's the person sitting on the bench looking up in the straitjacket.
That's my favorite one. That's my favorite. You picked my favorite illustration.
It's a knife, and it cuts. And it gets you, like, there's madness and fear and terror and just so much in that face. Like I said, you are the chef for everything people ingest with their eyes. And a lot of that is translating news articles or music videos or music into video. So you take something that's not visual and you create the visual. Is it different between books and music for you?
Every project is different, but it all kind of comes from the same place, whether it's doing a political illustration or social illustration on anything, with the horrors of war or poverty or whatever it is, to illustrating a children's book, to making a music video. It's all a response. It's just a matter of what I see in my head and getting it out. It's just responding and making that connection, being able to make that connection. Because a lot of people may do that, but the kind of key is to be able to translate it out, whether it's a complicated process of filmmaking or whether it's me just sitting down with my iPad. These images for Legion I was just basically sitting on my couch with my cat and a cup of tea with a ball game on in the background, and just sitting there, just drawing away on my iPad.
So you had the book out and you're reading it, and then when something struck you, you try to capture it visually?
Yeah, well, like on a book like that, the illustrations are the one thing that's tricky in a long book like that is the illustrations are going to be kind of spaced out. So you have to kind of pick. I literally had to go through the book, count the number of pages, see how many illustrations I had to do, and then put a bookmark in those particular places to kind of get a general idea, because there were so many rich things throughout the book.
Yeah.
But I had to find something that kind of went around that area. So if you're doing a book where you've got 20 illustrations or 30 illustrations, you have a lot more frequency of the choices you have, because it's more parts of the story. But when it's broken up to a smaller bit, you have to really find those moments throughout the book. And I would just pop, it's like, just been doing this so long, it's just like I just know, like, oh, this is the moment, this is the moment, this is the moment, this is the moment. And then I just go about doing, like, rough sketches, very rough in a sense, no color or nuance to the form or anything, but very clear in terms of what's going to be happening.
So you send them the rough ideas of what you're thinking and pretty much the key scenes you're going to capture, and then they're like, yeah, go for it. Were there any back and forths? Were there from Suntup in particular, did they feel like there was something you needed to tweak on any of them?
So just we worked a bit on the cover. We had different ideas about the cover, so we went back and forth a little bit about that. But for the most part, the inside pieces, that pretty much whatever the sketches were, they were really cool to work with in that way. They just accepted them. And another thing that's really cool about it, to be able to have my say in the history of literature, in terms of being able to whether it's illustrating Little Red Riding Hood or some Legion or some horror story, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Just to be able to join in that kind of history of to reinterpret something was really great. And just a wonderful thing, the quality of the productions on some of these books, the care that they put in. I mean, it's just beautiful what they do with the book. So it's great to see a little small part of that tradition of because we live in such an age of ethereal, kind of everything's floating in the ether out there. I can see behind you, you're about the objects. You have these objects behind you that come to you. And So for me to be able to be to be a contributor to helping to create those objects for people. And that's what I've loved about books. You know, I love doing things that are paintings that just one person gets, and they have this a painting in their house that I did. Nobody owns that. But I also love doing something that I did a video for a band called Disturbed, and they did a cover of Sound of Silence.
You did that? You did Sound of Silence? Oh my, we had that on heavy rotation here at my house. That is an amazing video. I loved it. Oh, wow.
And it's just, and that's the thing, that's a good example of just what's in my head. And, you know, it's all, I shot it up at my house, in my house, walking around.
Wow.
I live in Topanga Canyon, so I've got all kinds of trees and rocks and stuff around. And then just made it all in like one room with one computer, and the video existed on a hard drive the size of a deck of cards, and you push one button, and then this video goes out into the world, and it's got like 890 million views or something, and it's nearing a billion views. At one point, I think around 700 million views or something. I tried to figure out that concept of time. And there was at one point when I was trying to figure out the human time that was spent of people just kind of watching this video, and I added it up. And if one person was going to watch the video around the clock, I forget what number was that, they would have had to watch the video around the clock 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 5,500 years to add up to the collective human time that was spent watching this thing. And I was just playing around in my yard and my computer, and you know, and that's what I love. And then even if to do a limited edition book, like you know, or just an artifact like this. So I love that the work is out there floating around for people to see. But then there's also somebody sitting down in their chair, their favorite chair, and just, you know, maybe they love this story, and it's a new way for them to look at it. And you know, the artwork in a book is like the artwork when people would buy record albums. You know, that was the thing. You get that thing, you just sit on your bed and stare at the cover.
You're hitting on all of the things that I'm mourning. The rumbling of the trucks behind the newspaper place. The album art. When you used to get an album, the album art, the 12-inch sleeve was just as integral to the record inside. And then you would put it on, and you'd have to listen to what the band, the order of the songs they picked. And that was all very intentional. You could read the liner notes, and it was an experience. There's something similar with your work in Legion and the Disturbed Sound of Silence. The most brilliant things seem predetermined. They seem like inevitable. Like that video for Sound of Silence, like, yes, this is how that video should be. The art for Legion is, yes, this is how the art should be. You know, there are a million ways you can express Legion. There are a million ways to go about capturing those moments. But when you hit it just right, it seems inevitable, and it seems like an of course thing. And I think that's what strikes me with pitch perfect art.
You know, it's really wonderful to hear your observations about things, and I think you're spot on with this. And things you talk about, you know, doing work that, you know, the Sign of Silence video or the book covers, the Legion art. That's my job. You know, that's like, as much as it's like my passion and my, you know, my pursuit and all those kinds of things, it's my freaking job to nail it, you know. And what makes, in my mind, what makes successful art, and consequently a successful artist, that they can create work that transcends their own belief in it. Like for me, you know, and there are a lot of artists that can't do that, or they wish they could, or and that's where the level of success of an artist comes in your ability to create work that transcends your own interpretation of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because your role in it is you are taking some of that emotion that the reader should be feeling and giving it a focal point. And I've come to appreciate that, especially with the art when it's highlighting that emotion. The art in Legion is anguish. There's that idea of that fuzzy border between mental illness and demonic possession, that fading of the human into something that feels different. And I'm not saying that's the point of the book, but it's definitely a vibe.
Absolutely. Well, that gets revealed through the story. You know, that the exact thing you're talking about, I think, is kind of the heart of the story. is that kind of that the walking that line, which way is it? And I think what grips the reader is that you then look into your own self and say, what's my blurred line between my, what I'm quote unquote possessed by, whether it's a passion about something or a view about something that you're not, whatever it is, and an intense view of something, and how that can lead to a particular kind of behavior that you may potentially regret, or you believe in it so much that you're just going to push forward, and also in relation to how other people would perceive it. So I think a book like that walks those lines, and so the images, and for me, in the images, like there's one particular image of the detective where I was just where there's a moment in the story, and he is I'm not going to give it away, but he's in this position, and just what I was able to do to get into his face, just the expression on his face when he is kind of reached his point of no return, and there's that moment, and so to be able to just get into that face, show the emotional power in the story through my image making. I also am in kind of an indirect competition with any art that's ever been done for any of those books, and but the challenge is all the same, is to do something that is true to your vision as an artist, but then also serves the purpose of the project.
Okay, so there was a movie on Legion, Exorcist 3. Did that play a role at all in your process with creating these visuals?
So I always really I really avoid any of those kinds of comparisons and stuff. The reason I'm like that is not that work is I'm above that work or beyond that work. It's just that I do everything I can to kind of create from the inside out. I conceptualize from the inside out. I don't go around looking at books, and I was considering working at a production studio that had a lot of directors, and they had a whole room dedicated, like glass encased with comfortable chairs and books, kind of like what we've got behind you, but all kinds of art books and photography books and design books. And so the directors could go in there and sit down, and if they got an idea or concept or whatever, they could go in there and look for ideas, or they take pictures of things to make these presentations and stuff. And if that's their process and they end up somehow being able to come up with something that's original and quality, more power to them. But for me, I eschew any of that kind of thing. It doesn't mean I don't look at art, but I'm not really a collector of art. I'm not a viewer of art. I don't hang art up. I don't really study it. I'm just more in the kind of the making of the thing. Doesn't mean I don't have influences and inspiration from people,
right?
Not to a particular project, and I avoid that. Or something like this, I didn't want to see any other work on Legion or old book covers. I'll look at it afterwards to see how my thing kind of fits into that lineage of work, which is kind of fun. But up front, I don't look at any kind of references like that.
In Exorcist 3 has Brad Dourif, it has George C. Scott, and I was so happy to not see them here. And that photo, the illustration of the detective, that anguish, that surrender in the posture, the way the head just sort of folds over that shoulder, all those things, if you were hamstrung with some of the visuals of the movie, it'd feel less emotive. It would feel, I don't know, it loses some of that feeling. And I think in all of these stark, dark illustrations, that anguish, that person on the cross with that vision, I mean, it's all just so pitch perfect.
I appreciate that. And again, it's like, I want to make this my own vision of, I'm very, as respectful as I am about other people and love to appreciate other people's work, I'm also very competitive. This is my shot, and once it's out there, that's all there is to it. And so I'm going to do everything I can to make my pieces, my work, stand on their own, and I don't want to pull any punches in that way. I want to really be able to make my statement independently of anything that's been established, because it is a very experiential thing to do. It's not just a static image that comes out. There's a very interactive part of the process where you're, kind of getting emotionally and technically and narratively involved in what's happening as you're creating the image, and you're watching the image literally kind of come to life in its own way, because you're bringing it into existence, and it's going to go out there, and other people it's going to go into their brains, into their eyes, and into their emotions or whatever. And that's, what an incredible gift that is to be able to have that opportunity.
And when it works and you feel like you're reading with somebody who gets it, and you feel deeper in the story. And I will say, you were obviously born with an overabundance of ambition and talent.
Well, thank you for saying all that. I really appreciate it. It's very kind of you. And that's, I mean, a big part of the reason I do it is this idea, like I mentioned before, about being the kind of professional sharer. My job is to share. My job is to help people interpret things, feel things, figure things out, ask questions, answer questions. Make them give them some escapism. So I really enjoy that part of it, and it's a very fulfilling thing. It's a very challenging thing, and it's something that you look for through my own struggles in my own life, whether going through personal struggles or trying to figure something out or what I'm going to do. Having this ability to and desire to want to create, that I'm still at, working 40 years as a professional, that I still feel like I just got out of art school. That's the whole point. The whole point to make, we live on this very, very, fucked up, beautiful, amazing planet, and it's a really brutal, beautiful place. And sometimes, to have the kind of existential justification for what's the point of being here, to have something within yourself, the desire to create. For some people, it's to raise a family. Other people, it's to teach children. For somebody else, a doctor or a therapist, it's to heal people. Whatever it is, if you can find that cause, if you can find that thing that's unwavering and undying, and somehow feeds you.
Yeah, no, I think, and those are the inputs. And I think if you want to connect as a human, you have to connect with humans, and you have to bounce around, because it's amazing. It's very important to spend time alone, to hear yourself, to understand yourself. But then when you meet other people and you get challenged, you learn more about yourself. So I think those are the things that grow. You have to trust yourself. Blinders can be ignorance, but it can also be focus. And I think trusting yourself is how you get others to trust you. And you've definitely followed your course, and you've gotten people to trust you with their visions, which is sacred. I think to get a creative to hand over their product to some other creative, it's a very dicey situation. William Peter Blatty is no longer with us, but working with an author's baby is difficult.
For me, I completely understand that. And maybe when I first started out, and of course my goal is to fit in with the project, whether it's interpreting a song or a book like Legion, but it's also to be able to be doing this professionally at a high level for 40 years is, well, you can help whatever ambition I had or competitiveness I had. That was the byproduct of that was confidence. And so, and not confidence that's just within myself, that I'm just like some false confidence or something that I just kind of imagined or hoped for or wanted. It's something that I've earned, kind of. And confidence is a beautiful thing. It's not always there, and it's usually very hard earned, and it's earned through failure and mistake and doubt, some period of that. But once you get it, I mean, if once I become confident about something, I'm not going to give it up, because I went through too much to become confident. And so that's, and that's a form of, that's like a force field. That's not a superpower, but it is a power. That's why I'm really grateful to the story and to the author, who I'll never get to thank, but sometimes I do get to thank them, or I've been able to thank, if I do a music video for somebody, whether it's any of these people that I've mentioned, I get the opportunity to say, hey man, thank you for this, because I would not have been able to create this piece of work if you hadn't created this piece of music. And so that's where you get that partnership, and that's what's so fun about the whole deal.
You're thanking somebody for giving you the experience that you were then able to create a new experience.
One thing that I don't want to lose touch with is the gratitude to be able to still do what I love more than anything. And to be
It's
able to
razor sharp. I mean, this is razor sharp stuff. This isn't like when you talk about being relevant. Sometimes I think being relevant could lead to regression, because sometimes when people want to be relevant, they're looking backwards at what are the young people doing, or what are these other people doing, and it can dilute if you're distracted and you're not focused on who you are. Instead of adding things into your toolkit,
Yeah, relevance for me is looking towards the future, is looking towards
Yeah.
how to be relevant is to continue. You know, that's to remain relevant is to continue on your path. And so everything that I do is geared towards. I'm certainly calling upon. I would be crazy not to call upon the last 4 decades of being a professional artist, but I'm not going to. Those are the things. That's the wind at my back. But you know
Yeah.
that, and that's pushing me forward. But I still have to figure out where the hell I'm going to go. There's nothing in my past that's going to inform me or tell me what's over the next horizon. That's for me to kind of to imagine and to hope. You know, and I'm still hoping, I'm still guessing, I'm still rolling the dice. You know, I mean, I've invested 23 years in writing this image maker's handbook. It's 2,000 pages. It's thousands and thousands of hours. And
Yeah.
I have no idea really how it's going to be. I have my belief in my mind about what it's going, the value that it's going to have, but that's never going to, I have no control over that. I can influence it and I can put it out there and give everything I have. But that's not going to be the deciding factor. It's just going to be the risk that I'm taking, but that's what keeps things interesting.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing. So thank you so much for taking your time today, and I'll look forward to talking to you later.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for thinking of me, Jeff, and bringing me into this world and stuff. And I just am so grateful to the people at Suntup and to give me this opportunity, because I wouldn't be able to create these images if these people didn't believe in my work. And that's really the thing that's, that I keep looking for and valuing. So, and also people like you that care about the work and take the time to, share it. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, and good luck in, in this crazy world.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, seeing you, buddy.